If you're a gamer, you probably have a few characters that you consider personal favorites. Some have enjoyed widespread popularity by functioning as an icon for a given company. Others have earned the respect of gamers by having their story play out through numerous games over time. However, not every character needed a ton of publicity or showings to make an impact. Whether it was their combat abilities, the influence their games had, or their ability to stand out despite the limited success of their developers, these characters manage to steal the show even if they don't always get the attention they deserve. Here are 5 awesome video game characters you may not have heard of. Number 5. Croc. Once the 64-bit era of gaming was looming, Argonaut had started developing a 3D platforming Mario spin-off starring Yoshi. This developer team had been involved with Nintendo previously to create NES Glider, a prototype for Star Fox. The team had also created the Super FX chip, a hardware modification specifically designed to give the SNES advanced graphical capabilities. Though Nintendo rejected the title, Argonaut wasn't deterred. They continued work on the title and changed Yoshi into a crocodile named Croc. This quirky protagonist was on a mission to save the Gobos, the species who raised him as a child. The game was pretty impressive for the time and even spawned a number of sequels. Croc may have inspired numerous anthropomorphic platforming characters on the PlayStation, and Argonaut maintains that the original demo served as an inspiration for Super Mario 64. Number 4. Nikolai. Resident Evil has no shortage of well-known villains. Osmond Sadler, Alexia Ashford, and of course Albert Wesker are just a few of the names that come to mind. But these villains all share one common characteristic. They manage to survive in this world and wreak havoc due in large part to the use of superhuman abilities brought on through genetic modifications. In Resident Evil 3, we find out that Umbrella has deployed a special forces team to Raccoon City, supposedly to contain the outbreak. The team is headed by Nikolai, a former member of the Spetsnaz Special Forces. But Nikolai goes into business for himself, resorting to killing off members of his own team and even trying to kill Jill to further his own interests. But unlike other villains, this rogue operative relies solely on his combat skills and quick thinking to survive and carry out his mission. He is constantly one step ahead, and in one ending, he can even escape the city. His morality may be questionable, but his survival skills certainly aren't. Number 3. Bonk. When the 16-bit era came along, all the big names in the industry had their mascots at the forefront of their marketing campaigns. The Super Nintendo had Mario and the Sega Genesis had Sonic. However, while these two consoles may have been the most well-known of the time, they certainly weren't the only ones available. The TurboGrafx-16 was a solid console that fell short of mainstream success in the North American market. But the system did have some memorable titles, one of which was Bonk's Adventure. The game starred Bonk, a caveman with an enormous head. He platformed through a prehistoric world, headbutting anything that dared to get in his way. The game had a number of sequels, and Bonk himself gained a cult following. Bonk's games are available on the Wii U Virtual Console, meaning to this day, he is still sitting comfortably alongside the likes of Mario and Sonic. Number 2. Abria. The PlayStation introduced us to some very memorable series, like Tomb Raider and Resident Evil. These series are remembered fondly for their shooter combat, puzzles, and gripping stories, as well as for their notable protagonists. These games led to multiple sequels, remakes, movies, and more. However, there are also a few lesser-known series from this era that had their own interesting characters. Abria was the protagonist of Parasite Eve and its sequel. While Tomb Raider was known for its platforming and Resident Evil for its survival horror, this series had an RPG element. It featured gearing, looting, and an experience system. Aya was an extremely powerful character who could use parasite energy to heal herself, attack enemies, cast status effects, activate buffs, and more. The first game was actually a sequel to a book, which was also adapted into a film and a manga. The game had its own sequel, which led to a separate manga for the two, and a spiritual successor game was also released. Though not as well known as certain other characters, Aya is awesome and the Parasite Eve series is definitely worth checking out. And number 1, Geno. Once Mario leapt into the 64-bit era, a noticeable change took place in the series. Gamers were tasked with collecting items in order to progress, and this change has continued in future games. But what started it? Well, from a functional standpoint, this format allows gamers to choose their own path to a certain degree, giving them more freedom. But from a story standpoint, this change actually came into effect toward the end of the SNES's lifespan. Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars introduced Geno, a sagely and wise character who also had great skills in combat. He came from the Star Road and informed Mario that he must collect star pieces as they played a big role in the divine hierarchy of that universe. Up until Geno came along, stars had always been thought of as nothing more than a power-up. This trend obviously caught on in future games, but sadly Geno never returned as a playable character. However, he did make a cameo in Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga, and a Geno Mii costume is available in Super Smash Bros. 4.